Here in the northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks, where kindred souls gather to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as a February room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for Composite Development's fly rods and fishing accessories. Tech, precision, ingenuity, legacy. Go to cdfishing.us and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Here's your host, Lauren Carnop, and this is the February Room.
Welcome to the February Room. Obviously, again, I'm not Lauren. This is Justin, and I'm sitting in this week because we have a special guest who I've had some great exploits with. Welcome, Frank Smethurst, to the February Room.
Hi, Justin. It's good to hear your voice, my friend.
You too, buddy. It's been a long time. The last time I saw you were mounted atop a magnificent steed riding into the sunset in the Seven Devils of Idaho. What have you been up to since?
Oh, well, a lot of different things. Like you, it's a few kids ago now. But I've got one. I know you've got two, and I don't remember quite as much from the time before all of that.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sure you've been up to something. Can you share an adventure with us?
Oh God, so many of those. I can tell you the cleverest mishap or misadventure. Since I last saw you, I almost died in the Yucatan.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a problem. A friend and I, Joey McCumber and I, went out in an unproven boat, brand new boat, and turns out the gas gauge didn't work and a lot of other stuff on it didn't work. And we drove from southern Mexico into Belize. So for any search parties that were out looking for us, we were unfindable. Nobody knew where we were. And we ended up spending the night in Chetumal Bay, which was not that big of a problem. It was a beautiful night till midnight. And then the largest series of tropical Caribbean storms that I've ever experienced or known about rolled in and completely battered us for hours and hours. And in addition to the gas gauge not working, the bilge pump wasn't working. And Joey and I and Carlos bailed furiously throughout the entire night to try and keep ourselves afloat as the boat, in these 50 and 60 mile an hour gale winds, was swept towards the reef in Belize, and it was horrific. And I mean, to tell you the truth, my life was really, I've never been so scared for my life, and it really kind of changed my life. I made a whole bunch of changes after that night. That was November 8th, and that would be 2014.
Wow. How did that end? How did you guys get out of that?
Well, we survived by bailing the boat out, and just about the time the boat was filling with water, both with waves coming over the side of the skiff and torrents of rain pouring down and filling the skiff, just at the time the boat was for sure sinking, the squall would stop. And we could just bail the boat out, and we had water bottles or Diet Coke cans cut in half in either hand. And we were double hand bailing as fast as you could for, what seemed like forever. And we would just get the water out of the bottom of the boat and get the boat pulled back over towards a key or some sort of flatter, shallower area when then the next squall would come in. So it was this crazy up and down roller coaster that almost killed us, 7 or 8 times during the night. And we made it. We made it by sheer grit, sheer determination. And do you know how, like, if you've been in a swimming pool so long that your skin begins to prune?
Sure.
My hands were swollen to double their normal size. And I can't even tell you the crazy fatigue and the exhaustion. I mean, by the end of the night, we all almost accepted our fates. I mean, we had tried anchoring by a key, and the mosquitoes and everything would come out and murder us, and then another squall would come up, and it broke our anchor line. So, I mean, literally every single possible thing that could go wrong in that night really did. And we were in a very, very harsh, deeply inhospitable place with sharks in the water and jaguars on land. And I mean, the whole thing. And, and I did all of this. I put myself in this place all on account of fish. And so, yeah, I've spent a little bit of time considering that. I really have.
Wow, man. And you guys were out there all night?
Oh, yeah. We didn't get rescued until 9 a.m. the next morning. And we had pulled almost back into Mexico from Belize that night. And we ended up by some keys called Cayo Venado, Deer Key, on the fringe of, down near where Mexico meets Belize near Xcalac and Chetumal Bay. Yeah, my life has really been pretty different since then. I decided, at that point I was kind of this rep. I had a company that sold fly fishing gear all over the country. We had a really big territory. Myself and my partner Jake McKittrick, and we had a territory where if you bought fly fishing stuff between New Orleans and Salt Lake City, all the way up to the Ozarks and back across to the top of Utah, the fly shop that you bought stuff from probably got some of their stuff from us. And I decided that I really, I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to travel around. I wanted to figure out more ways to be closer to my wife and daughter. Don't get me wrong, I didn't swear off fishing.
Right.
I just suddenly realized all of the potential for harm that I could create by taking it too far.
Sure, man. I mean, that scene you painted there is like something from that book Unbroken. That's terrifying. I've not had to endure quite anything like that. But just from my own personal experiences working in television for so many years and the traveling and just the weird stuff that happens, the close calls, the run-ins with whatever, a cartel in Mexico and I mean, once I had kids, I was like, all right, I gotta get away from this and figure something more mundane.
Yeah. Man, at the end of that night, mundane was looking pretty damn good.
Right. I bet, man.
I slept, literally my entire body was swollen and my hands were unrecognizable. They looked like hands from a corpse because they were so swollen and so pruned up. And when Joey and I finally made it back to civilization, I slept for 30 hours straight, the longest sleep of my life. And when I woke up, everything was back to normal. I had shrunk.
Wow.
But yeah. In that night, while they were trying to rescue us, the entire boating and captain community in Xcalac was out trying to find us. So much so that they were doing gas runs to fuel the fleet out looking for us because they knew the storm was coming, and they were trying to save us. They didn't know that we were in Belize. And during that night, they're making gas runs up and down the highway between Xcalac, where there is no gas, and Mahawal, where there is a gas station. And I guess it was just this crazy night. They saw 4 or 5 jaguars on the road. And, it was just one of those things where if a couple of variables had not gone our way, that would have been it. That would have been it. Because I'm talking about, like 50, 60 foot mile an hour winds creating, 10 and 15 foot waves just outside of these flats that we're struggling to stay on. But Carlos is trying to pull the boat into the wind and hold the boat into the wind. We didn't have an anchor anymore. And, we're still getting swept and we're jumping out and holding the boat. And then all of a sudden we would lose it and we were trying to angle over onto another flat. But we were having to bail at the same time. And the waves were coming in and it was And it just
Wow.
never stopped over, solid 10 or 12 hours from midnight to 8 in the morning. It was it's just this unending, lethal chaos.
Wow, man, that's hairball. Well, I'm glad that they were looking out for you,
Yeah.
and everything worked out, man. That's scary stuff. On a lighter note, I
Yeah,
gotta tell this story on you. So
please do.
so when we first met each other, this was what, '07 or something like that,
Yep.
and you had been hired to host the Trout Unlimited show.
Yep.
And the premise of the show, I was newly hired at this production company in Missoula, and the premise of the show, the big reveal was this incredible trout trailer, this Airstream trailer that had all this artwork on it. It was painted like a brown trout, a rainbow, a cutthroat,
And a brook.
and a brook. Yep, you're right. Yep, yep,
Each corner.
yep.
Each corner.
And
It was
it was
amazing.
incredible.
It was an amazing vehicle.
It really was, and like I said, I had just been hired, and so this was kind of my first experience in the world of TV. And I see this thing, and I was like, wow, these guys are serious. Like this is a real production here. And the whole team is out there, every employee, and it's a big to do. It was like a parade, and you're hooked up to the trailer, and you're driving a brand new Ford King Ranch pickup truck.
No, well, we had a Tundra to start with, and then we periodically would borrow the black Ford pickup, which would try and lock us out, and ultimately did.
Right. But initially, I was with the crew. I was the audio guy, which is a dreadful position.
You were great at it, though.
Oh yeah, I was one of the best. That audio vest pretty much runs itself.
Listen, people out there, let me tell you something about Justin Carnup. I saw Justin Carnup outfish myself and the entire TU crew floating down the Madison while running audio.
crystal clear audio.
Yeah, crystal clear.
Well, you were handicapped. You were handicapped on that one with that guy that would only target the dark rocks in the river. Remember?
Oh, how could I forget?
But anyway, so initially, we had the Tundra hooked up to our Airstream trailer, and they were filming the opening scene with you in the boss's brand new King Ranch. And I'll never forget this. You were smoking. You had just lit a cigarette. And I was standing right next to the boss and kind of the production manager, Ginger. And the boss, John, says, hey, he's not going to smoke in the truck, is he? And Ginger says, no, Frank would not smoke in your pickup truck. And then you hop in the truck, and John says,
drove away.
He is smoking in the truck. And you drove away. And that launched the TU on the rise, and we had some great shenanigans, man. And it was so much fun. The one trip that I will never forget was the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, which you pretty much set the whole thing up for us, and that was such a cool canyon. One of the neatest places I've ever been.
Yeah, still is. I'm lucky enough where I find it as my office periodically, even now. I get to float down it a couple times a year.
Oh wow, that place is spectacular. And I understand you're back in show business. I actually was watching an episode of Das Boat the other day on YouTube, and I'd heard that you'd been involved in it. That's one of the reasons why I tuned in. So tell me how that developed.
Well, Miles Nolt, who was a writer for The Drake for a long time, and a friend of mine, had gone to begin working with Stephen Ranella at Meat Eater there in Bozeman. And he tapped me to help produce because he didn't know anybody else from Georgia, and they were going to do a Southeast leg last year. So I helped, put together and produce and host a couple of episodes last year. And, it really went well. We did some really cool stuff. And if your listeners out there have a chance to check out some of the episodes that we did in Georgia on the Savannah River from last year, and Miles was very kind, and Stephen were very kind, and on the strength of last year's shows, brought me back for this year.
Awesome, cool. And what's the premise of that show? It's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's great. Miles had a big hand in creating the idea for Clyde, sort of a vehicle that travels, via the Drake. It travels around the country, and Miles really kind of transposed that idea and created the idea of a beat up old aluminum boat, the kind of boat that some of us, at least a little bit throughout our fishing youth, probably hopped into. Maybe it was an uncle's or a grandpa's or dad's or who knows, but that boat travels around the country and different people hop into the boat to fish. But on the day before they fish, they've got a full day and a budget of usually about $500 to fix up the boat, make it better, and then, make it a better fishing craft. So it was great. We got to really MacGyver some cool things into being on the boats now that I've worked on two of them. And it was really fun. I love to. I've always liked mechanicking. I'm not an amazing mechanic or anything like that, but I really enjoy it. Learning how to really become a better marine repair person was great. And getting to fish in my home, my birthplace of Georgia, was wonderful. And I got to explore some very, very off the radar places down there. And and this year I got to go up to Minnesota and fish for the first time, which was also really cool. What an amazing place Minnesota is. I mean, everything is a lake full of fish or a river full of fish in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's all water up there. We have my wife's family is originally from the North Woods of Wisconsin, and they have a cabin up there still. And I've had many opportunities to go up there and fish around there, and it's incredible. It's like you said. I mean, the rivers are some of them are reminiscent of Western rivers, which surprised me.
Yeah. And I can't wait to go back there because of Corona, etc. We were a little bit late in sort of getting out there to shoot all of this, and it was unavoidable. But we were about a month and a half, 2 months after the really prime fishing out on Red Lake, which is where this year's episode took place. So, we were doing our best to catch fish, and, I brought fly rods and spinning rods and all kinds of, high-tech flies and stuff like that I'd crafted. And none of it was worth a damn, whereas slowly dragging an inflated nightcrawler behind a very quietly idling boat was what they wanted barely. And so that I actually learned a lot. It wasn't my very favorite type of fishing in terms of it's not quite as active as I like, but there also was a lot more to it than just sitting there in the boat and nodding off. You had to drop, when you felt a bite, you had to really skillfully drop it back, X amount of time. And, it was amazing. You could make one small mistake on letting the line out or opening the bail too late or whatever it was, and they would drop it. And I mean drop it, game over. So it was nice to, cultivate a new skill, even if it's one that I don't use quite as often as, fly fishing or surf casting or other stuff like that I tend to do more often.
Sure. And you were fishing for smallies or?
No, we were fishing. We're fishing. So Red Lake has a lot of different fish. It does have smallmouth and a lot of panfish, but it's really a walleye fishery.
Gotcha.
And in there with the walleye are this pretty wonderful relative of a redfish, and that's called a freshwater drum. And in Minnesota, they're much maligned as a trash fish. They call them sheephead. And, it's a fish that I'd caught before. And, you just hold one up and it's like, damn, this thing's got to be probably pretty good to eat. But everybody around here says they're terrible. So our game plan, and I was able to host this show with Danielle Pruitt, terrific expert on cuisine and now an amazing walleye fisherman and boat driver. And she and our task was to try and catch some of these sheephead along with, the sort of the other staples of Minnesota table fare, which would be crappie or crappie, they say there. Do you say crappie or crappie?
Crappie.
Yeah, okay. Well, see, growing up in Georgia, it's crappie. But anyhow, so crappie. Now that I live in Colorado, I guess I gotta commit to it being crappie. But anyway, we're to catch crappie, walleye, and freshwater drum and assess, hey, is this thing really horrible to eat? And you know what? You need to tune into the episode to find out for sure. But let me tell you something. 5 out of 6 Minnesotans agreed that they may have very well been wrong about which fish was the king of best freshwater fish in their state.
Well, there you go. You taught them something maybe they didn't know.
Oh, they taught me tons too. Yeah, it was amazing. And Daniel, because Daniel's such an amazing chef, I learned a lot about culinary techniques. And I love to cook, but I'm not amazing at it or anything like that. And it was great to learn from someone who's way better at that.
Well, I can attest to your cooking. I've eaten a lot of it.
That's right.
You made
That's
us
right.
a lot of meals on that TV show over the years, and you're pretty dang handy in the camp kitchen for sure.
Well, that's one of the things you learn as a producer. I mean, producers really like sort of being on a guide trip with a crew of 4 or 5 people, and you're only as good as your food. Everybody gets pretty surly pretty quick when the food starts to taper off.
Yep, you're exactly right. It's just like a guide trip.
Yeah.
And speaking of guiding, so you come from Georgia. You guided trout there, probably some bass too. I'm not sure.
Well, I have, yeah.
That's what I assumed. And now you're kind of entering the realm of doing some steelhead guiding. And my guiding path kind of was the opposite of that. I kind of started out as a steelhead guide, got totally burned out on that, and then gravitated more towards trout. So, can you tell me a little bit about the differences between being a guide for trout and bass and steelhead, and what kind of toll that takes on you?
Well, one of the things about that night that almost killed me was it really created a path back to guiding in a lot of ways. That's always been where the rubber hits the road for me. I love to share adventures with people, and I love to teach. And I'm a people person, and the stuff that I've done via the media has always just been an extension of my guiding. And I decided that I wanted to be able to return to guiding in a little bit more significant fashion. And there were fish that I always wanted to have more than a passing knowledge of. I wanted to have a guiding knowledge of them. And how, when I had to return to Atlanta for a couple of years, I guided for stripers and trout and bass in Georgia. And I have always been such a dedicated steelhead fisherman, even when, it was just a road trip for a week, a year, or something like that when I was repping. And I really wanted to develop a level of expertise with them, despite having fished for them for 20 or 30 years. I had never guided for them, and I was able to secure the ability to guide for them in Alaska. And wow, what a roller coaster guiding for those fish is. I mean, I can understand how you must have gotten burned out on the Deschutes. I mean, steelhead are so desirable and make people so crazy that you oftentimes, doesn't matter how remote you are, there is some sort of race to get to the perceived best spot, and whether you're using seaplanes, kayaks, rafts, dories, jet boats, whatever it is, there there are very few steelhead destinations on the planet where there aren't very dedicated others thinking the way you are. It's kind of the F1 of guiding. I mean, it is next level. And, and steelhead don't, they're not always really super cooperative. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say, doesn't it? It kind of makes you envy those Atlantic salmon guides that know that they're going to show up and have a private beat of 5 miles to themselves
Right.
that day, right?
And, before you even get to deal with the fish, you often are dealing with, so many other variables. And it sure put my trout guiding in perspective, in that I really appreciate every single day where I'm guiding in Telluride for the Telluride angler, and just how straightforward that is by comparison. It's so much more of a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Whereas, steelhead, it's all over the map. The beginners catch all the fish, and the experts that you're have been everywhere and have caught thousands of steelhead get blanked, or there's just sometimes maybe fishing for me is a search for reason, and you have to let go of some of that when you're looking for steelhead. A friend of mine said when I returned to steelheading after a break from steelhead, when I was really pursuing a lot of roosterfish for a couple of decades, and he was like, Frank, if you're going to come back to do steelhead again, you have to remember rule number one. And I was like, well, what's rule number one of steelheading? He was like, rule number one of steelheading is that there are no rules. Don't ever forget it. I was like, well, what kind of crazy, obscure, abstract thing are you telling me? And you know what? He's right.
Yep.
He's right. They're guiding principles, but steelhead, it's an all bets are off type fish. Doesn't matter who you are, where you go, what you do.
It really is. And with steelheading, you have to really enjoy where you are, the
Yeah.
scene. You have to enjoy the casting, and you have to enjoy that whole process. And for me, when I do get lucky enough to catch a fish, it's when I'm not thinking about the fish.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps.
Yep.
It helps.
Yep. That's probably my problem with permit, is I haven't gotten there yet with those fish where I'm like, all right, I'm just out here having fun, making some casts, and I'm not so
Well,
focused on those crazy things.
so I had a big stint chasing permit for a while also, and the hardest part about permit is how far up on a pedestal they are by the time they finally, in your mind,
Right.
by the time they finally show up in front of the boat. And do you know, and I've caught them that way just by chasing permit, but it's kind of gotten to be with me where I usually say, hey, look, let's go look for the biggest bonefish in the area, in the deepest water. And if a permit shows up, great. And by then, if I'm sitting there tossing the fly at bonefish, sooner or later I'm going to catch a few of those. I'll be warmed up. I'm in the zone. And then all of a sudden, when a permit shows up, I don't throw complete junk at them.
There you go.
I throw an insightful fly that is permit relevant. And, I'm dialed when they show up. The going out on a boat and doing it for 2 or 3 shots a day, it's still so exotic to me to go to those foreign locales where I just don't want to commit quite that hard to permit, although I find them wonderful. I've caught them. They're great. But, give me the bow and a whole bunch of bonefish and maybe a sprinkling of permit, and I think I'm happiest.
Yep, that's well said. That's definitely the frame of mind that I seek in pursuit of those things. And I haven't fished for them for a while, and I've had just a really good time saltwater fishing for other stuff. And when the permits show up, yeah, I make some casts at them. They never eat my fly, and all's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like fishing either a spawning shrimp all the time, or, it's a good one as a kung fu crab, because bonefish eat it really well too. And, just kind of keeping whatever you throw. A lot of guys I know on the Yucatan throw a squimp, and that catches both fish perfectly. So, if you just kind of choose a fly wisely and pretend a permit's a bonefish and a bonefish is a permit, next thing you know, you catch them both, and you get to catch a few more fish a day and get plenty more shots a day without, standing there waiting for something mediocre to happen.
Yeah, beating your head against the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than waiting 2 hours and then throwing a just terrible shot at the fish.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then it's like, well, permit fishing in any way is pretty humbling in some of the same ways that roosterfish and steelhead are. But permit are kind of the gambler's fish, and I don't know if I want to commit an entire week of just chasing them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Sign me up. I'll be your sidekick anytime on a trip with that in mind. Speaking of roosterfish, so I went back and I watched Running Down the Man again the other day, and you're probably tired of talking about that movie, but that movie kind of it raised the bar for fly fishing films and kind of started that whole thing, don't you think?
Well, I haven't seen it in a while, but that's the way I've always felt about it, and it's a real testament to the filmmaking ability of Ben Knight and Travis Rummel, who've gone on with Felt Soul Productions to make so many great films. And and as longtime friends. We were able to really put something together, and it was one of those things that when you're making productions, you're never really sure if you're going to encounter that lightning in a bottle, that amazing scenario where everything that you're hoping will turn silver turns platinum. I mean, over the top, everything's going well. So it was an amazing experience, and whether it's that or even Eastern Rises, I really stand by both of those works with a tremendous amount of pride and also humility. I got to team up with the best guys and go to the best places, and I get to do it. I get to do it more. Whether it's with you guys and Jake and Nate and Pack Horse Blackie.
Yeah, and Gus the cantankerous mule. That was my mount.
Yeah. To our
uh,
listeners out there, we're talking about the various pack animals that we had to bring the crew in up into this wilderness in Idaho, where I caught some nice bull trout.
it was really cool.
But yeah, it was very cool. But anyhow, none of the pack animals liked any of us. But a couple of them really disliked Jake, our head cameraman, and Blackie didn't like you much either.
No, no, and then remember they put me on the mule because the mule was the calmest, most consistent animal. They'd never had a problem with him, and Gus just hated my guts, and he turned around and ran as fast as he could on that trail that was on a precipice leading down into that. I thought I was going to die for sure that day. He ran all the way back to the lodge, or
That's
back to
right.
camp, back to Stouter's house.
With you
With
bouncing
me
around mountains.
bouncing, hanging on for
For our,
dear life.
and for our listeners, Justin's a pretty big, tall guy, and Gus, being a mule, not that big. So it was a pretty amusing looking, apparition there,
Oh, jeez.
flying across the Idaho high mountain prairie. You barely holding on for dear life.
Oh man, that was something else.
So yeah, I love to make really good productions. It's like putting together an amazing guide trip, and I tend to produce most of the stuff that I do, so that really taps into my guiding instincts. And making a really good production is like a really good guide trip, in that it's this incredible story that you're doing everything in your power to have create a happy ending and learn a lot and have it be enriching and usually humorous. That's always been my shtick, is that if you're not laughing a little bit while you're fishing, you're doing it wrong. You really are.
No doubt.
It's the best opportunity to really sort of get with people in a very real fashion and really break bread and laugh about the undertaking at times, and putting yourself in the position of being this hyper intelligent being trying to chase this pea-brained fish that invariably wins many rounds. So
Yeah, speaking of which, the golden doofus, man. Anytime I need a laugh in the middle of a steelhead run when I'm struggling with my spay cast or something, I envision the golden doofus coming out of the woods to check on me.
yep, that was yeah. It's a long story, but
Yeah,
we
that's not
discovered,
neither here
we
nor there.
discovered a character. We discovered a character on the Deschutes who truly earned that title.
Is there a fly called the golden doofus?
That's got to be. You got to add that to your series. I give that to you first.
Oh, really? Okay, man. Thanks. I'll do my worst with it. So your daughter's 11, right?
Yeah.
Does she have the bug?
She's got the river bug. She's got the water bug. I go really gently on the whole fishing thing. She loves to net all the fish. She loves to be net girl. And when I finally hand her the rod and say, "Hey, do you feel like making a couple casts?" Usually the fishing's pretty on, so she makes one cast, catches a fish, and she's like, "God, Dad, this is so easy. I can't believe people pay you to take them fishing." It's like, "Oh yeah, that, yeah, you're right, honey. You're just." I try and also say, "Hey, it's actually you're kind of good at this. Is why." And her middle name is Dolores, so she's named
Oh,
after a
right.
river. And I keep telling her that reminding her that she's got these inherent and intrinsic links and she will be a water girl her entire life. So, I don't know if it'll fully take with her, but I'm not going to be overly pushy about it.
You're not sure if it's going to develop into Dolores's fish problem yet.
Huh. It's probably better for her if it doesn't, but I know that someday there's going to be all manner of fishing guides, that are like, "Whoa, this girl can really, make it happen." Right now, she's more into netting fish and paddling her sup around, and that's been, for any listeners out there, I'll tell you what, if you're trying to get your kids into fishing, I have found that stand-up paddle boards are just this amazing way to get kids really, really enthused about going down to the water at all times and having fun. And fishing as an addition to that is probably a little bit easier segue when you're a parent trying to teach a kid about fishing. If they're already down at the water supping, it's on. They sometimes they want to take a break and make a couple casts, and that's been really working for us. So stand-up paddleboards are the best thing I've brought home to the family from the world of fishing.
Yeah, you're spot on, man. I got one this summer. We got one this summer, just kind of by happenstance, and we were up at a lake in August, rented this cabin, and our boy Sawyer, who's 6, just grabbed it, paddled out, and was hucking his spinning rod and caught the first bass of the trip after I'd been trying for like 3 days.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and he loves that. The sup is, you're exactly right there.
And you can take it with you, all around. My sup's been to Dubai and Baja and the Yucatan, and it's nice hopping off the plane with your own boat.
Oh yeah, they're the best. Like I said, I just got one, and I don't know why I waited so long. The versatility of them is unmatched.
Did you know that if you take about a third of the air out of it, it becomes an incredibly comfortable air mattress?
Oh, that's good to know. No, that's
right.
It's like a multi-tool.
Dude, I've slept like a toddler on mine.
Oh, that's a great call. Good to know, man. Yeah, I can't wait to spend more time with mine this year. Do you got another story for me, Frank? That first one was going to be tough to beat, but a guide story or something that happened to you in your travels with media production or fishing in general. Dig into the vault.
Dig into the vault. That's the there is a good vault here. Let me see.
There's a vault.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about back in the day when I guided in Alaska. I was guiding a trip with Scott Howell, really terrific steelhead guide, really tremendous reputation now on the Umpqua River in Oregon. And Scott and I were guiding this family, and it was an older. We had this older couple and then 2 other people, and I was up this braid on the upper Alagnac River, and I suddenly noticed that the braid was completely full, bank to bank, of sockeye salmon streaming upstream, headed to the headwaters to spawn. And there was no way you could get, there was no way to get a fly in the water without catching one. And I'm sitting there looking at this column of sockeye on the bank, and it's about 3 or 4 feet wide. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and then all of a sudden it gets to be about 5 or 6 feet wide, and then it's 6 or 8 feet wide, and then, as I said before, suddenly it's bank to bank, the sockeye, and then all of a sudden I see sockeye starting to head downstream, and I was like, "What is going on?" And then it occurred to me, "Oh no!" And I looked upstream, and running down the braid was a good-sized grizzly bear, and I mean running. Not walking, not like, "Oh, look, he's 200 yards away. Isn't this a great Wild Kingdom moment?" No. This bear is 100 feet from us and closing at light speed. And anyhow, my client, who was the older lady, had not seen the bear. And I was like, "Oh, and let's call her Mildred." And I was like, "Oh, hey, Mildred," and I was trying to keep her from noticing the bear. I was like, "Hey, Mildred, let's go back up this way." And I'm sitting there trying to block, her vision of the bear. And she's like asking me, like, but the fishing's so good. And look how many there are all of a sudden. And they're splashing around. And literally, there starts to get to be this huge din, this loud splashing, because the salmon want to go upstream, but the bear's pushing them down. And all the salmon that are coming upstream are thrashing. And all the salmon that are getting chased downstream are thrashing. And I mean, it's beginning to be a roar in this back channel of the Alagnac. And all of a sudden, she looks over my shoulder. She sees that the bear is 50 feet or less away and is still just booking towards us. And he doesn't even see us. He is staring at the fish and chasing the fish. But he's big. And Mildred folded up in my arms, passed out, cold, completely cold, in the midst of the river. And I am pinned to the bottom of the river, standing there holding this poor woman, who is out like a light. And here comes this bear like at light speed. And right then, like the first calf coming over the hill, Scott Howell, who's like 9 feet tall, and big and scary looking. I mean, he's got a shaved head, and he totes a Mossberg 200A riot barrel shotgun and some sort of giant handgun. But he's always like super strapped, literally like the Terminator. He comes over the rides in the tundra,
like Thor.
Yeah, holding the, he's got the shotgun, he's got the pistol, and he's like, I got this, and he basically runs between us and the bear, yelling, and we're all yelling, and Mildred, we start yelling, and Mildred wakes up a little bit, and then sees the bear and passes right back out. And so I'm holding her, and it's like this giant sack of potatoes that, is really unwieldy. I can't hold her up much better. And but I'm pinned to the spot. I'm trying to drag her towards shore, but it ain't really happening. Scott and I are both yelling and screaming, and then finally this bear notices us and kind of stops, and you can see him in his bear mind considering, hey, these guys are in my place. This is where I fish. What are these two idiots doing here? And what's this? Whatever that one of them is holding looks delicious. So anyhow, the long story short, Scott never really had to shoot even a warning shot. The bear just took one look at him and pretty much decided to ease around where we were sitting and where we were standing, and the bear kind of faded off into the underbrush on the far side of the braid. But that was my biggest sort of bear scare and encounter